Is it the case that we have become so left-brained and analytical that we have inadvertently arrived at a state of disharmony with reality that is no longer to our benefit, but instead both to our detriment and to that of the very planet of which we are stewards and on which we depend to sustain us? Ian McGilchrist claims that the left hemisphere's dominance has led to an overemphasis on narrow, analytical thinking at the expense of the more intuitive, imaginative, and emotional aspects of human experience, which are largely mediated by the right hemisphere. He suggests that this has resulted in a reductionist and mechanistic view of reality, which fails to appreciate the complexity and richness of human experience. Ancient wisdom has long since emphasized the need for harmony and balance. There is therefore something poetic about the notion of disharmony within the organ that represents the very seat of our consciousness, causing outward disharmony. The concept of as within, so without is a philosophical and spiritual concept that is often attributed to the ancient Egyptian and Hermetic teachings. The idea suggests that there is a correspondence between the inner world of our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions and the outer world of our experiences and environment. In other words, what we experience externally is a reflection of our inner state of being. Perhaps the time has come for a greater emphasis on harmony and integration. Ian McGilchrist is a British psychiatrist, author, and former Oxford literary scholar, known for his work on the relationship between the brain and culture. He is best known for his book, The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World, which explores the differences between the left and right hemispheres of the brain and their impact on human experience and culture. First, it's important to note some key differences in the way that popular culture has come to view the two hemispheres of the brain and their respective roles, and McGilchrist's view, which is informed by his psychiatric work. According to McGilchrist, in popular culture, the roles of the two hemispheres of the brain have been simplified and exaggerated, with the left hemisphere often portrayed as the logical and rational side, and the right hemisphere as the creative and emotional side. However, Ian McGilchrist argues that this simplistic view is not accurate, and that both hemispheres are involved in all aspects of human experience. Ian McGilchrist's thesis in The Master and His Emissary is that the two hemispheres of the brain have different and complementary ways of understanding the world, and that both are necessary for a full and rich experience of life. He argues that the left hemisphere's emphasis on narrow, focused attention and analytical reasoning needs to be balanced by the right hemisphere's holistic, intuitive, and imaginative way of apprehending reality. Some of the key implications of a left brain bias include narrow focus, an over-reliance on language, a tendency to categorize, linear thinking, reduced emotional awareness, a tendency towards reductionism, and a reduced ability to see patterns. Since the left brain is focused on analyzing details and breaking down complex concepts into smaller parts, this can result in a reduced ability to see the bigger picture or to integrate information from different sources. This is something akin to the idea that one can lose the ability to see the wood for the trees. The left brain is also dominant in language processing, which can lead to an over-reliance on verbal communication at the expense of other modes of expression. In fact, Ludwig Wittgenstein, the 20th century Austrian-British philosopher, argued that language can be a source of confusion and misunderstanding, both in philosophy and everyday life. He used the phrase "bewitched by language" to describe the way in which people can become trapped in language games and fail to see the world beyond the limits set by the parameters of language itself. According to Wittgenstein, many philosophical problems arise from a misuse of language, such as trying to apply words to concepts that they don't accurately represent, or assuming that words have a fixed and universal meaning. He believed that language is shaped by its use in different contexts, and that it cannot be understood independently of its practical application. Furthermore, the left brain has a natural tendency to categorize, given that it is adept at categorizing information and putting it into boxes. This can lead to rigid thinking and a reluctance to consider alternative perspectives. This ought to remind you of the notion of thinking outside the box. Thinking outside the box is a commonly used idiomatic expression that means thinking creatively beyond the confines of conventional ideas and approaches. It refers to the ability to think beyond established or conventional ideas, to consider innovative and unconventional solutions to problems, or to approach a situation in a new and different way. It is also the case that the left brain processes information in a linear, sequential manner. This can result in a lack of appreciation for complexity and a tendency to oversimplify complex problems. Linear thought and global thought are two different cognitive styles that reflect different ways of processing information and making sense of the world. Linear thought is characterized by a logical, sequential, and analytical way of thinking. It tends to focus on details and breaks down complex problems into smaller, more manageable parts. This way of thinking is often associated with Western culture, where it has been emphasized in education and other areas of life. In contrast, global thought is characterized by a holistic, intuitive, and relational way of thinking. It tends to consider the context, the big picture, and the interconnections between different elements. This way of thinking is often associated with Eastern culture. It is important to note that these cognitive styles are not mutually exclusive, and individuals may use both approaches depending on the situation. Indeed, this is something that Ian McGilchrist is aware of. However, there are cultural differences in the degree to which these styles are valued and emphasized. In the West, linear thought has been emphasized as a key to progress, efficiency, and success, while in the East, global thought has been emphasized as a way to foster harmony, balance, and interconnectedness. It may therefore be a useful mnemonic to think of the left hemisphere of the brain as West and the right hemisphere as East. Interestingly, the left brain is less attuned to emotional cues and tends to approach the world in a more detached, rational manner. In Western culture, rationality and logic have been highly valued as the primary means of understanding and making sense of the world. This emphasis on reason and logic can be traced back to the Enlightenment period in the 17th and 18th centuries, where thinkers such as Descartes and Newton proposed that the world could be understood through reason and empirical observation. As a result, Western education systems have emphasized the development of logical thinking, problem-solving skills, and critical thinking, often at the expense of emotional intelligence and social skills. This emphasis on rationality and logic has led to a culture that values objective, measurable, and quantifiable outcomes, while undervaluing subjective and emotional experiences. In contrast, in many non-Western cultures, emotions and intuition are considered important and are often integrated into daily life and decision-making. These cultures may value interpersonal relationships, harmony, and spiritual connections over individual achievement and success. At this point, it should come as no surprise that left brain dominance also skews the landscape in the direction of reductionism. The left brain's focus on analysis and breaking things down into smaller parts can lead to a reductionist view of the world in which complex phenomena are reduced to their component parts. It's possible that when this style of thinking is emphasized, the world appears to us as something flat and lifeless as a result. There is a final key implication of the left brain's tendency to break things down into their component parts. This is a reduced ability to see patterns. The left brain's focus on details can sometimes make it difficult to see patterns and connections between seemingly disparate pieces of information. Taken as a whole, these tendencies can result in a view of the world that is overly narrow and focused on detail at the expense of a more holistic and integrative approach. By bringing the two hemispheres back into harmony, McGilchrist believes that we can achieve a more balanced and integrated view of the world, one that is capable of appreciating both the analytical and the intuitive, the rational and the emotional. This in turn can lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful experience of life, one that is characterized by a greater sense of connection and wholeness. The following is from the 1988 Stephen Mitchell translation of Lao Tzu's The Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding.